Hi guys, welcome back to the BMW vlog channel. In today's video we're bringing you a new kind of format in which we take the design of a newly presented BMW model and give it a go at adapting its design based on our own criteria and what changes you would actually like in order to improve it. The design we will be working on today is none other than the newly presented Vision NEUE Class X. This concept serves as a preview of BMW's upcoming 2025 iX3 model from their new electric family known as the NEUE Class, which is a direct nod to the new class of cars that BMW launched back in the 60s. Not only will this new family introduce the brand's first EV-dedicated platform, but it will also boast a fresh new design language similar to what we saw on the NEUE Class sedan presented back in September. So let's take a look at what BMW designers have done with this new concept. Up front, we can see how this concept has maintained the design language from the sedan, but with an interesting twist. Instead of keeping the sleek horizontal kidneys that we can see here in the sedan stretching right from the center to the entire width of the car, designers have now added two vertically shaped kidneys on top of it. Unlike those minimalist kidneys we saw on the sedan, these actually pay homage to those that we can see on the 60s models from the NEUE Class, which similarly compose the front fascia by a horizontal grille with integrated headlights and the two narrow kidneys placed right at the center. Honestly, I think this is a nice departure from recent designs we have seen on BMW SUVs lately, with their gigantic grilles such as the XM or the iX model. Nevertheless, I'm going to take note of some changes that I would like to make in order to redesign this front end. Starting with the bumper area, I don't particularly like this new trend of covering up too much of the front end with these black graphics that mimic air intakes. If we take a closer look here, the air intakes actually only use up this small area across here. I know this is just a concept version that will have a lot of changes when it goes into the road legal production version, but for the sake of this redesign, here's the first change I'll make. I'm going to lower this black graphic to let more body color fill up this area. With it, I will also be adapting the shape of this air intake into a more trapezoidal shape, if you will, to make the car appear much taller and much less complex around this area. Next up, you guessed it, time for the kidney transplant. Now, don't get me wrong, I love what they've done with this unique interpretation of the iconic kidneys for this NEUE Class series, as it is a clever way of distinguishing their upcoming SUV lineup, or the X models, if you will, from the sedans in the NEUE Class. However, I'm going to reshape this into a more horizontal and dynamic form that, in my opinion, better suits this design in terms of proportions. The problem with these pill-shaped kidneys featured in BMWs from the 60s and 70s eras is that cars have grown significantly over the years. Although this car isn't an X5 or an X7 replacement, what we're looking here is at a proper SUV. It's just a strange impression that we get from seeing this new grille design when we have been used to X models such as the X3 and X5, expanding the size of their kidney grilles according from one generation to another. In addition to these new kidneys I'm redesigning, I'll be adding a really nice chamfer around the frame to give it that nice touch with the reflection of the light from the headlights as well as the kidneys themselves. Oh, one last touch before continuing with the rest of the car is to do with this piece of trim right here. You may have seen this bisected air splitter piece on the new X2, for example, but the main difference with that one was to do with the contrast. I'd much rather have this piece painted in full black rather than having it stand out so much, you know, from the air intake. And there we go. Now, moving on to the side view, I actually think that BMW have done a fantastic job at sculpting the muscles from the front and rear fenders. Unlike with the bulbous lateral panels on the iX, for example, This one, in my opinion, draws a much bigger contrast between those bulging fenders and the flat surfaces from the doors. The visual element that draws the most attention in this lateral view is this character line down here, which, according to the head of BMW iDesign, Kai Langer, is a direct callback to the 3 Series from the E30 generation. What this design feature allows is to reduce all of that visual weight perceived in tall SUVs, thus resulting in a much cleaner side view with much more room to extend the window frame downwards. Now, designers tend to push for increasing the visibility of passengers with these new larger greenhouses in the electric car era. However, I'm going to make a couple of changes here that I think can make a big difference. For reference, SUVs usually tend to look much sportier when the waistline sits closer to a 2/3 proportion of the car's height. With this design choice right here of the window taking up so much of this area, and in combination with this black panel reducing even further the body color of the car, therefore I will be adding a little bit of character around this area by completely covering up all of this extended window area with a newly flat surface. Hopefully this can add some more visual stance at the height of the shoulders. In addition to this, I will be adapting this frame right here around the Hofmeister King to directly connect with the new shoulder line and therefore add some more dynamism. With regards to the door handles, I think they look like a clever solution in terms of aerodynamics, but I'm not entirely sure on the feasibility of bringing this into production, as they might result in being perhaps too delicate, or maybe they won't make it through the safety tests. Either way, I'm going to add here the typical flush door handles that we've seen on recent BMW models, which, in my opinion, they look really nice and discreet while remaining comfortable to use. Let's take a look now at the rear end. Contrasting with the NEUE Klasse sedan, designers have sculpted this rear end in a much more elaborate way, playing here with much more dramatic curves and creases across the entire rear. I really like also how they shaped this dual-tone bumper to integrate here the license plate, which on typical BMW X models would be placed right in between both taillights. The light reflectors also look really cool in this vertical position, like BMW M models, with this vertical trim placed on this clean chamfer surface that also helps to reduce the visual overhang of the rear end. My only problem with this rear end has to do with the taillights, really. I mean, they look cool, don't get me wrong. We could even interpret them as an evolution of the recent X5's taillights, but in a more sleek and minimal form. What I'm not really sure about is their width. It seems as if they wanted to make them into a light bar initially, but maybe with some last-minute changes, they decided to, I don't know, split them in half and allow this narrow space for the BMW logo to be incorporated. I don't know. What I do have in mind for this redesign is to make here a callback to one of my favorite SUV designs from BMW's history, which is the X5 from the E70 generation. In my opinion, this model has stood the test of time, unlike many models from that era. Nowadays, it feels as if the new taillight designs are becoming, I don't know, a bit too complex and losing some of that BMW simplicity and character along the way. Therefore, I'm going to redesign these taillights too, to also make the car a bit feel wider and to add that touch of classic X5's DNA. Starting with this part, I want the housing of the taillight to resemble the typical L shape from SUV models, like those from the early 2000s, or maybe even the latest X1. Then, after cleaning up this part with some nice and sharp horizontal creases, I want to relocate the BMW roundel to this part right here in between the taillights. Now watch this. by chiseling this part right here below the taillight, the resemblance to the classic X-style taillights becomes even clearer. As the light reflects from this crease, the rear now gains a lot more dynamism around the edges while not becoming too overstyled. As you may have noticed, in contrast with the concept, the taillights now become a split design rather than one single piece. This decision usually has to do more with the engineering side of the car's development, as the split design of the taillight housing usually results being much more costly than otherwise. Of course, it really depends on the model that we're talking about. So in the iX, for example, it makes much more sense to have one single piece of taillight as it has such a wide trunk. And on other models, such as the latest X5, for example, it makes much more sense to have the taillight piece split up. Finally, I'm going to replicate the changes that I made of the window frame and the shoulder line to visualize them now on this new rear three-quarter view. And perhaps also tint this minimal diffuser in black, just to make it more consistent with the blacked out splitter from the front end. So, what did you think of the redesign of the Vision NEUE KLASSE X concept? I feel like these changes bring out a lot more character in this design without deviating too much from the NEUE KLASSE essence. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't an adaptation of the concept car into a production-ready version, which you can also check in a recent BMW blog article we posted. This is just our own interpretation of what visual changes that we think would suit best to this car's design towards pleasing you guys, the BMW fans. And with that said, let us know if there are any other parts from this design that you would have modified from the concept, or if there are any particular elements that you would maintain from the concept into a production-ready version. Stay tuned for more content on BMW design, and as always, thank you very much for watching.